partnership ventures in Nigeria. There are collaborations between government and private firms to deliver, infrastructure and services. And, while, some of these have succeeded, we still have some challenges that arise during these partnerships. And so that it's very important to have, regular assessments for these public-private partnership. Now, joining us this morning via Zoom to, talk more about this is Chukwuma Chiedozie Kachi. He's a public-private partnership expert. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
All right. Now, first of all, I'd like to know, in your opinion, so far, looking at, the public-private partnerships in Nigeria, what is your assessment of it? What do you think about the current state of the PPP ventures in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Actually, PPP is a veritable tool for increasing the infrastructure provision in any country. Nigeria is using PPP or trying to use PPP to provide some infrastructure, but unfortunately, we have not made as much progress as we ought to because of a number of factors. For the PPP to succeed in any jurisdiction, 6 conditions must be there. The first is the political will. We have that in Nigeria, thanks to our present President Tinubu, who came from PPP background. He did it in Lagos, and since he came, he has actually done a lot. The next is legal, institutional, and regulatory framework. In Nigeria today, we have the legal, we have the regulatory, but we don't have the institutional. Institutional is that MDAs will have frameworks on how to drive their PPP process. With the exception of 1 or 2 MDAs, the rest don't have it. The result is that we have what we call bureaucratic inertia. When you submit a document on PPP to a ministry, it takes 3, 4, 5 years before you can get to any reasonable level. The next is access to private finance, because PPP involves private finance. Nigeria has to do a lot there. There's no way the investors can borrow money from our banks at 20%, 25%, and still make profit. Not possible. Government has to find a way of keeping money somewhere, as is done in a Federal Mortgage Bank for houses, where investors can borrow money at low rates, 2%, 3%, 5%. Government has to do that. Sorry. The next is revenue. Revenue must be steady, predictable, profitable. And that will normally involve guarantees. Unfortunately, our colleagues in the Federal Ministry of Finance and Justice don't want to hear the word guarantee, and it's actually affecting the PPP process. The 5th condition is that there has to be a competent team, project team, that will select and procure good projects through a fair, economic, competent, and transparent process. This is where we are going to have some problem with Akami concession, because there was no competition. Then the last, number 6, very important, is the use of transactional advisors. Unfortunately, many of our MDAs don't understand the value of transactional advisors, so they don't really engage them. All the problems we have had in PPP, like the P&ID, where we escaped Hammer, Ajokuta, where we paid $495 million, a lot of money. Sunshine, we are still battling. Mandela project, we are battling over that. The other time, Vovogum issue, our presidential jet was seized, eventually released and things like that. The single factor, denominator, is lack of transaction advisor. So if we can get these conditions in order, I can assure you that PPP will do a lot for us in this country. Thank you.
All right. Now you've said quite a number of things, but I'd just like to know, how well would you say, or how well does Nigeria's PPP law and system, attract serious private investors, considering, some of these challenges that you've just mentioned?
Yes, we have the ICRC Act, which was done in a hurry. It was during privatization that it was discovered that you cannot privatize ports for the simple reason that you can't sell the entry and exit to your country. So concession was quickly introduced. So the law has a lot of loopholes. And since 2022 or 2022, I can't remember, we were in National Assembly. I thought everything was over. Till today, no new law has come out. We need that new act. That one is more encompassing. You see, investors will take a look at your law. Naturally, before somebody can put his money somewhere, he must have confidence in that system. So our ICRC Act, as it is today, is not enough to inspire confidence from investors. And I use this opportunity to call on our National Assembly that's a bill. We all came to National Assembly like 2021 or 22. Should be made into an act so that it will be of great value and attract investors. Thank you.
All right, now let's look at, the sectors in Nigeria that have the most successful PPP projects. So I'd like to know, in your opinion, what sectors are those that have, the most successful projects, and what would you say is the model, the PPP model that works best in Nigeria's environment?
The sector that has the most successful PPP are the ports, because payment is in foreign currency, dollars, pounds, and the Deutschmark and all whatnot. So it's not surprising that they are very profitable there. But where we actually need these PPPs are in places like roads, hostels for students, and all of that. Those are the areas we actually need the PPP. And they are not working there for these reasons I have given. They are very successful in ports because, as I said, the revenues there are foreign currency. So there's no problem with those ones. Thank you.
All right, but I asked earlier as well, what PPP model do you think, works best in Nigerian's environment? Like, aside from the sector which you just mentioned, the ports, which have the most successful project, what about the model that works best in our environment, in your opinion?
Well, actually, the model the whole world is looking at is concession, which involves huge private finance. But I believe lease, which is also a form of PPP, I believe is the one that is working best in the country. That is called government builds an assets and hands it over to the private sector to run. I believe that's the one that is working best. Concession, which is actually the target of PPPs all over the world, is not that working. There are other forms of PPP like service contracts, given as part of operations of an organization to the private sector to run. That one is not a problem. Like all these MDAs and so on, they are now employed. They have outsourced their security, cleaning, and things like that. Those ones are working. But that's not really the target of PPP in country. The main target is concession, which is the highest level of PPP. And that is the one we should target to work. Leases and what do you call it? Service contract, management contract, they all work. But those ones don't involve much private finance.
All right, so now let's look at, state PPPs and federal PPPs. Now, I'd like to know, how do state PPP projects, for instance, like those in Enugu or any other state, compare with, federal projects? Is there a difference between the two, and, how would you compare them?
Of course, there's a difference. To me, other than Lagos and Ekiti and perhaps Ogun, I don't really, and I think Kaduna also, I don't really think PPP is working in other states. I don't really think so. We have not gotten any information they are working there. The problem is lack of capacity by the public servants. all these states have not really trained their civil servants on PPP. Civil servants are naturally trained in traditional procurement. By the way, there are two ways of procurement: traditional procurement, where government pays from its budget, and PPP, where the private sector brings its finance. Civil servants are trained all over the world in traditional procurement. In the States, I'm not aware of much training in terms of PPP, and that is what affects it. Because you see, it is the public sector that determines the success of a PP. No matter what, it is the public sector that will select the good or bad private sector partner. It is the public sector that will select transitional advisor or not select at all. So the public sector needs a lot of capacity building for it to come out of PPP. That's why in many states they sign MOUs. Check the states, you see 50, 100 to 150 MOUs not working because the capacity to drive the process is not there.
So what can be done to improve the capacity, in these states and, help improve the situation of the PPPs?
Simple. Let the states key into PPP training by different societies and organizations going on all over the country. And we have an association, Public-Private Partnership Practitioners Association of Nigeria, where we in the ecosystem came together. Our core mission, I'm the president, our core mission is to empower our members with knowledge, confidence, and insights in PPP. A knowledge-empowered member is a confident member and is better positioned, better placed to participate more effectively in PPP activities. Therefore, in our association, we always organize presentations to deepen the knowledge of our members. My advice is that these civil servants who are there in office on behalf of the rest of the country should try and join our association and acquire the knowledge for PPP. Because see, PPP, you need a paradigm shift in thinking. It's a new concept. Not that it's entirely new. It has always been there. Zacchaeus of the Bible was involved in PPP. But PPP is a new concept undergoing a new revival. It needs new knowledge, new skills, new processes, new units. A lot need to be done. So these states must consciously embark on capacity building for their officials. And one unfortunate thing about PPP is this: it is deceptively simple. In the sense that because the obligation of the government is small in PPP transaction, government officials wrongly think that the government role is equally small. Like in a PPP, most times all the government needs to do is to provide land. It's a simple act. The government still has a lot to do in that transaction. And because of lack of capacity, the government officials think that once you give land, you go to bed. And the PPP becomes self-reporting, self-regulating, and becomes a success on its own. It doesn't work that way. So the states, they need a lot of capacity building for the officials. Thank you.
All right, so now let's look at the impact, these PPPs have had so far in the country. What would you say the impact has been in terms of, would you say it has helped reduce Nigerians' infrastructure problem? Would you say it has helped create, jobs or transfer skills? What exactly would you say so far, looking at the current PPPs in Nigeria, the impact has been like?
The impact has been very little, I must confess, very little. Take, for instance, the roads that are supposed to be built through PPP, concession of the roads, SDMI. Since 2020 or so, it has been online. Nothing has really happened. I think 12 roads have been concessioned. Only one has become functional, or is about to become functional. That, of course, is a very poor record. And the reason is it is like that is because Federal Ministry of Works did not work with a transition advisor. You see, a PPP is project is implemented using established framework. And I mentioned the framework, 6 of them, including transition advisor. You can't move away from it, otherwise it will not succeed. As the saying goes, no process, no access to success. Every success has its process. You must follow it diligently before you get there. And every project has activities, it has jobs, it has tasks put there. And every activity, every job, every relationship that was put there was purposefully and thoughtfully put there. It was not put there for the fun of it. So anyone you skip, you are skipping your success. That is the problem we are having in PPP. That's why I rate the success in PPP in Nigeria just about 10%, but we can easily move up to 50, 60, and so on. It is not rocket science because it's done in other countries. Even rocket science is no longer rocket science again because people manufacture rockets in their backyards again now these days. Thank you.
All right. It's quite sad that you're rating it at 10%, the current, the impact of PPPs. And we hope that in the coming years, PPP ventures, get better and also have a lot more impact in Nigeria. But thank you so much for your time this morning. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we've come to the end of the discussion on public-private partnership ventures in Nigeria, and up next, as you know, is Political Circle with Luke Umbo. Stay tuned.
Get plugged into the heartbeat of entertainment on the Hub